Hello Kaiju fans, welcome back to the Kaiju World Order. My name is MM, and this is Monster of the Week, where, as you know, about to talk about a monster that was voted on by members of the Kaiju Hugbox Discord server. You can join that by just following the links in the channel. And without further ado, this week's monster is none other than Suika Idom. And when you see this thing, yes, it is indeed a watermelon monster. You're probably thinking, well, how in the blue hell does a watermelon monster even happen? Like, alien or something? Well, it's a lot deeper and weirder than that. But before we get into the story and the backstory and everything of this monster, I just wanted basic information on it, I guess. Is Suika Idom does come from episode 1 of Takoki Mikazaki. It is a very, well, it's not super obscure, but it is harder to come by than, say, most Ultraman. Just from personal experience in dealing with different kaiju fans, and from casuals to diehards like myself and everything in between, there's generally different levels of what people will go for. You have your typical Godzilla fans that will also do Gamera, and then occasionally that leads into the deeper end of the pool, which would include Ultraman, Sentai, some of the Kamen Rider stuff, and then after that you start getting into not the super rare, but stuff like this. Takoki Mikazaki is a rather unknown. It's a short-run series from the early 2000s from Keita Amamiya. He's one of my most favorite directors in Japanese cinema. He did Zaram, the Hokkaido reboot, just everything about his work I love, and he has a very creative, very wild, and just sometimes batshit crazy ideas that just work. And Suika Idom is one of those ideas. And just showing the concept art, if it looks familiar at all, that is because the name escapes me. I will put it up during the editing of this. But the same guy that did the design for Suika Idom ended up being tapped by Toho in 2004 to help with the designs on Godzilla Final Wars. So there is a certain level of 7 degrees of Godzilla here with this monster. He did the GFW Gigan, and also you probably saw that concept art of Final Wars Godzilla with the red chest. It wasn't used, of course, but same exact artist, same designer. Just looking at Suika Idom, you can kind of tell that it's the same designer that did Gigan. It's very edgy, it's sharp, and it's not modern, at least not anymore, but for the time, it just had that post-Heisei look, and it just looks cool. I do want to go over just the merchandise real quick. There isn't much of this guy. There's just one figure. I do have it in my collection, and that's all I really know. There could be some other stuff floating around out there, but I have never seen it, and I looked for some other stuff and I could not find anything else. So it is what it is. And while there isn't many figures of this guy, there was a PlayStation 2 video game that actually featured Suika Idom and Takoki Mikazaki fighting. I do not know much about this game. I never played it. You can find footage of it on YouTube, which is where I found some of the pictures here. The game itself does look kind of fun. It appears you play as a human and you're running around at the feet of the monsters. Kind of like City Shrouded in Shadow, but on PS1 graphics, so yeah, don't expect anything big from that. But alright, enough of all that crap. Let's get right on into the Suika Idom's actual story. Despite being one of the most crazy kaiju ideas I have ever heard of, this thing's origin is rather dark and dramatic. It's tied directly to an ancient power known as the state of Gaira, No, not the green gargantua Gaira, but instead a sort of supernatural god or entity before the time of man. This power has had an enemy, a force which counters its desires. This thing is called Mikazuki. This balance went unchanged for eons until one day a cave-in Asia was discovered and the state of Gaira was disturbed. This bizarre force took one of the humans and warped him in both mind and body. His memories were twisted and his body was seemingly obliterated. Years later, that man's boy was being targeted by virtually every asshole in his school. Like, holy shit. Thank God Japan has this thing called common sense in their society that prevents children like him from shooting up his classmates and everything in between. But don't make me go on a tangent here. This kid is just so brutally bullied and nobody gives a shit. It is disgusting. The boy tapped into the power of Gaira and with his own anger and sadness and everything else ended up creating the first idea monster, the Suika Idom. It appeared overhead as a massive watermelon complete with a sticker. It was the same type of melon that Kazuo and his father enjoyed before he vanished. It even had a K carved in it the same way his dad would for him. Of course, humans eventually did what humans always do. They attacked it. The airborne melon put up a shield and simply sent their weapons right back, and not long after, a trio of absolute assholes disguised as children harassed and virtually kidnapped Kazuo and took him to Tokyo. You know, where there's a legit war zone going down with a melon. These children aren't just menaces, they are just dumb. Then, while all this was going on, there was this other weird-ass dude walking around in pre-MCU Loki gear. This guy just wants to know where he can hear the so-called voice of the planet, whatever that even means. And when nobody can tell him, he either kills or knocks them out. What a badass. Kazuo manages to get the slip on the blossoming serial killers of the future, but is stopped short by the watermelon above. The sticker on it opens up into the eye and fills his mind with memories of his father. The Not Loki throws his sword up and says he will make everyone hear the voice, and then the watermelon shoots out a bunch of seeds. This stuff is like it was written by someone on their third night without sleep and running on nothing but monster energy, and I love it. The seeds sprout limbs and teeth and go on a full-bore bad CGI that looks like a PS2 game. Rampage. But have no fear, for in Japan they do have discount Power Rangers, or I guess this would be discount Sentai, but whatever. One of them is even played by genre veteran, I'm gonna butcher the name, I suck at speaking Japanese name, Yukihiro Hotaru. You may not know his name, but he's the same guy that played Inspector Osako in the Heisei Gamera trilogy. So if you ever wondered what it would be like seeing him in full-bore Power Ranger mode, here you go. But before we get to the Not Rangers, we have to see their first in a lineup of crazy robots. The Gagoki is dispatched to mop up the monster melon and sadistic seeds. The trio meet up with the robot and the fight against the seeds on the streets begin. You ever wonder what it would be like if a watermelon seed ate an adult human soldier? Well, now you can actually see it because of this. The kid was eventually saved by the robot and made his way to the cockpit. The Not Rangers eventually did finish up the pesky seeds, but things were only about to get worse from here on out. Gakoki began to fire at the hovering melon, but no amount of firepower seemed to work. The little robot then positioned itself directly underneath it and sent anchors up into it, allowing the machine to drag itself upward. The goal was to reach the core of the melon, which revealed that it didn't have a sort of biology or anything of the sort. Instead, it contained a sort of gateway to another world. They began to pump in somnium, which was a special chemical designed specifically to deal with these so-called idea monsters. But the melon reacted violently. Dozens of tentacles emerged from all over it, ensnaring the now hanging robot and trapping the two young occupants inside. Why is a 16-year-old piloting this mech? I have no idea, but Japan. Anyway, its machine gun blew apart some tentacles, but they quickly regenerated into new ones. Only now they had jaws with teeth composed of modified seeds. I love how crazy this is. The cockpit was accidentally jettisoned in the chaos, leaving them dangling in an even worse state than before. And to make matters even worse, Kazuo fell. Trying to catch his diary in midair, the boy's life began to flash before his eyes. But as he fell, something in the sea began to rise, something that wasn't just there seconds before. Something that made absolutely no sense, and yet here it was, a giant statue in the middle of Tokyo Bay. It caught Kazuo as the watermelon tore apart the remaining bit of the robot, leaving the young pilot to parachute to safety. The watermelon moved into attack, but the statue deflected it with ease. Now there was no need to disguise what it was. The thing dropped everything and revealed its true form. As an idea monster, it was spawned by the memories of both Kazuo and his father, and it became the monster born from Kazuo's anger, sadness, and loneliness. And countering this creature was none other than Mikazuki himself. Before the battle could wage, the watermelon monster began to pull away, possibly intimidated by the arrival of this ancient statue. When Mikazuki's arrival and Kazuo now in their ranks, the Not Rangers organization, which I should at least say they're officially called AIT, or the Annihilate Idea Monster Tacklers, began to unravel the mystery. They blamed each other and of course drank. I'd probably be smoking a blunt or two also if I just fought a bunch of killer watermelon seeds, so I can't even judge. But they managed to discover the key to everything in this whole ordeal. The Not Loki soon appeared again and once more summoned the Idea Monster. This time, it didn't waste time. It appeared as its true monstrous form, and it tapped into its inner Godzilla and began to light up the city. AIT's most powerful weapons were useless and bounced harmlessly off of its shield, and Gokoki, freshly repaired but hardly in battle shape, was next to try. Its cannon malfunctioned and left it helpless, of course, and once more the pilot ejected and watched her robot get smashed. And now there was nothing left between it and the immobile Mikazuki. Its default shields protected it, but without Kazuo, it was virtually immobile. The melon generated huge tentacles tipped with axe-like blades, and they began to smash the ancient construct. And at the same time, two different forces were trying to reach Kazuo. But instead of listening to the obvious evil voices, he listened to the calm one and joined Mikazuki like any sane, rational kid would. And under his command, the golem began to move, and not only move, it began to fight. The black giant dodged a watermelon's bladed tentacles and came down like a meteorite, triggering an entire shockwave that caved in the streets. The thing retaliated by launching a building, but that too failed to hurt the Ancient One, and when its tentacles were destroyed, the Suika Idom activated its final strongest attack and launched a volley of explosives from its back. It thought it won, as its enemy was engulfed, but it thought wrong, and with one single somnium-fueled punch, the melon was put down once and for all, and Suika Idom was dead, and now episode 2 could start, but we're not covering that. God damn, that was crazy. Yeah, this whole thing, this whole series is a trip. I recommend it. I love it. I didn't want to get too spoilery with this, but unfortunately, just because of how, kind of complicated it is, I had to. But I highly recommend checking out Tokoki Mikazaki. It is a really cool series. And just talking about the monster now, it has two primary projectile attacks. Of course, a heat ray it fires from its mouth, which seems to be pretty default in power. It's nothing to write home about. I'm sure Godzilla could take it. It would probably kill some slighter monsters. It can also launch a volley of, I don't know what else to call them besides projectiles, but they come from its back and appear to be spikes made of watermelon, and they just blow up everything in front of it. This would probably do quite a bit of damage to a handful of monsters, even, say, a Showa Godzilla and stuff. Do I think it would kill them? Probably not. I don't think Suika Idom would really pose a huge threat to, say, Heisei Godzilla or even Showa Godzilla. But for, say, Showa Gigan or even Final Wars Gigan, yeah, I could definitely see Suika Idom being something that would, if not beat them outright, at least give them a good fight. It should be noted that it does have that hovering form, the flying form, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't transform back and forth, kind of like Hedra and Space Godzilla do with their flying forms. So we really don't know if it does just transform back and forth, or if that was like a larval state, then it became the adult state, in the same way a Batra does. And we can't forget the seeds. Again, just like the flying form, we don't know if the actual monster form could send out seeds like it did. I'd like to think it could, because it is kind of neat to have a monster that could actually do something like that. The seeds aren't anything super deadly. I mean, they're deadly to a human, of course, but I don't see them doing much to a kaiju. They definitely wouldn't do nearly as much damage to, say, Gamera as the Symbiotic Legion did, if only because there isn't that many of them compared to those legions. I would imagine that there was only about maybe 20 seeds that got popped off during that scene. We don't know for sure. I'm just spitballing a number, but it definitely wasn't as many bugs as it was in Gamera 2. So it's not a swarm attack like that. And then there's also the shield. We know it has the shield up at all times. It seems to be, well, I don't want to say it works like an AT field from Ava, because I'm not 100% sure how they work. It does seem like the shield can be penetrated, though, by powerful enough attacks. So I don't think it would be much of a problem for most Godzillas to get through. And I don't think it can even really erect it to protect itself from physical attacks. It seems to just be from projectiles. So it's not like if Gigan ran in with claws, it would be able to erect a shield and just bounce him back. Doesn't work like that. And the monster does have one other power, and this one is probably its weirdest. It doesn't seem to really do anything, but whatever it touches, it seems to coat in watermelon. You can see watermelon, I guess you can call it watermelon flesh, crawling across buildings in the streets when it first appears. It's such a weird attack. Even when the Gakkoki returns and it has bits of the watermelon like sprawling across it, we're not told what it does or how it even like affects what it's touching, but it's there. I mean, I guess maybe Godzilla could get covered in it and like start picking it off when he's hungry. It sounds kind of demented, but why not? So yeah, that's really it. When it comes to like how this thing would pair up against other monsters, as I said, it's run-of-the-mill Heisei. He could definitely do a number on most generic Showa Kaiju up to, like, say, Showa Gigan and Megalon. I don't think it could do much to Mechagodzilla or Showa Ghidorah, or Showa Godzilla would definitely beat it at its prime. Heisei Godzilla would beat it. Maybe stuff like Batra Larva, Orga, Megaguirus, I could definitely see them being more on its level. But that's all I really got to say about that thing. Until next time, Kaiju fans, peace out, and Minya, take it away.
Zilla says you should like and subscribe.